Good morning. I love that bumper. The background music is awesome. I missed you guys last week, but Aubrey, come on. Yes, she did such a fantastic job. Now you guys know why I love her. I heard from so many of you while I was gone, and I just want to say thanks. I know that she felt your support. And it's nerve-wracking, you guys, to get up here and talk to you. You're scary. And so I'm just really proud of her courage, and she just delivered the word so beautifully, and I'm so grateful to her. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rebecca. I'm the lead teaching pastor here. And I took a little break. Last week, I went to Vegas just for like a whirlwind 48-hour trip. I've spent time with my family. My siblings live down there. I'm the youngest of 6 kids. So I got to see my family and my nieces and nephews. And then I got to see my buddy Steven. Steven and I met in Copenhagen when we were 10. He was my first crush. He was also my first kiss, if I'm going to tell you what's up. He kissed me goodbye when we were 13, when I was leaving Denmark to move back to the States. And he has been my best friend and dear friend for over 30 years, and we never get to see each other. Currently, he lives in Atlanta, and so he's like, I'm going to be in Vegas for this conference. Is there any way you can fly in and we'll hang out? So we had lovely time, and I needed it. He is my buddy, and he's great. So thank you for giving me a little bit of space just to reconnect with old friends that fill my own cup. So we are still in the book of Esther. We will be for a couple more weeks, and I think what I love so much about what Aubrey kind of walked us through last week is she was talking about this idea of Esther learning how to navigate empire, and doing so in such a way where she maintains her identity. She doesn't lose it, even while maintaining some hiddenness, and she walks with wisdom in how she moves forward in these chapters. And we're going to get to kind of see how God utilizes her and puts her in a very specific and strategic position within the storyline. But today, everything is about to escalate, so prepare your heart, okay? We're going to be introduced to a different kind of character, not the quiet, faithful Esther, but we're going to be introduced to our villain today, and his name is Haman, and he's a piece of work. Let me tell you about Haman. If I'm going to be transparent and authentic, as I highly value in leadership, I have to start with myself. And I wish I could tell you that when I read the story of Haman, I'm just like, what a jerk, and I'm nothing like that. But I think true leadership looks inward and says, well, am I? Am I like that? Do I have the potential to be that kind of a leader? And it's embarrassing to admit those pieces of your character, those pieces of your heart or your mind, where you can acknowledge, man, I don't just see Haman out there. I do sometimes see him in here. And so for me, with regard to leadership, I have seen glimpses of this villainous spirit in my own person, especially when it comes to leadership within church ministry, where I've spent a lot of my life. I've seen this pattern in my life where I feel like my efforts have gone unnoticed by leadership within the church. And I wish I could tell you that my first response is always like, it's okay, audience of one. I serve God and that's enough. And that would make me really holy. But I'm never going to stand up here and tell you something that is not true. And honestly, there are times where something tightens inside of me and I think, do they not see me? Do they not see me? Is my work going unnoticed? Did that not matter? Am I not as valuable as I think I am? And I ask those questions, which, those are subtle questions that we ask ourselves. They're not loud. It's not overtly dramatic. But I think there's this quiet shift that happens from I'm here to serve to I deserve to be seen. And I think that shift is very human, but that's where this story will start to get uncomfortably close for us as followers of Jesus, because what we're going to see today in the storyline is that evil doesn't begin with monsters. It begins with pride. It begins with ego. It begins with arrogance. And it begins with pride that goes unchecked and unchallenged and unnoticed even. And oftentimes I think that I'm trying to communicate that oftentimes that pride is not just out there. Oftentimes it's deep within us. And we have to do work there. We have to do work there if we're going to bear God's image. We have to consider where are the times where I ask these questions, because most of us don't walk around every day and think, man, I struggle with pride. Man, I'm super arrogant. We just think, hey, I want to be respected. And I want to be seen. And I want to be valued for what I'm offering on the table. And I want to be treated the way that I deserve. Especially in our social media influencer culture, I hear this all the time. You deserve more. Do you guys hear this? Man, I get this all the time. You deserve so much more than that. You deserve so much more than this. And so you start to believe, yeah, this is reasonable. It's reasonable until it's not. And so today we're going to look at a couple things. We're going to look at what pride looks like when it starts to take root in your own heart, and how it grows when it's unchecked. This is why the voices around you matter so much. I have incredible voices in my life, and none of them let me get away with staying in this kind of place for any length of time. If I start to communicate, I deserve, or I need some of these things, they may sound reasonable, but if they go unchecked, like, hey, yes, you do deserve to be validated. Yes, you deserve to be seen. Those things are true. But also, hey, that's where bitterness starts to creep in. That's where we start to get some unhealthy patterns, okay? We're also going to look about how when pride starts as something small, and it is not challenged by the voices around you, it grows into something far more destructive than you could ever imagine. So let me pray for us, and then we're going to dive into Esther chapter 3. God, I want to thank you so much for your word and how it challenges me every single time. And I think what I love so much about the way that you design relationship with us is that you do business with us first. And you ask us to consider, hey, what is happening in our own lives so that we can then course correct and honor you with the way that we think and move and breathe so that other people can experience your love. I pray this morning that we would do that work, that we would recognize the places within our own selves that we need to maybe consider and maybe pattern interrupt, God. Stop finding ourselves in these cycles that actually do more damage and harm than good. And would you teach us the way we want to walk in it? We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let's look at Esther chapter 3. We're going to start in verse 1. It says this: After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, son of Ammedatha the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the officials who were with him. And all the king's servants who were at the king's gate bowed down and did, how do you say that? Obeisance? Somebody help me out. Is that how you say it? Thank you. Obeisance. Okay. For Haman, I probably should have read this before I preached it. For the king had so commanded concerning him, but Mordecai did not bow down or do obeisance. I know what the word means. I just can't pronounce it. That's the thing. I have my degree in English writing and my minor in English lit, but I never got any English speaking. And then I grew up overseas, so I really suck at saying some of these things out loud. But the word means bowing down or curtsy or paying due respect. Obeisance does. I would have said that obeisance. Anybody else? No, just me? Okay, great. I should stick to Danish. Okay, so obeisance. So Haman gets promoted. He was just a high official in the court, okay? So he was in the court of King Xerxes, and he had some power and some authority, but now he's got it all. He has been elevated to the highest of high. I don't know if you've ever experienced this in your own career, where all of a sudden, you're at the top. You're no longer really answering to anybody. And he is somebody that, answers to the king, but now he has power, he has position, and he has recognition. And what you do with those things really matters as a leader. Power, visibility, when people recognize you, what are you doing with your voice? What are you doing with your posture? What are you doing with that power? Now everybody around him bows down and pays him this respect, except for one person, and that's Mordecai. Aubrey introduced you to Mordecai last week. Mordecai is a Jewish man living in exile, and he's Esther's cousin, and he raised her. And so Mordecai refuses to kneel down and bow down and pay him honor and respect as the king, as the king's highest official. And this is where the whole story starts to turn, because Haman doesn't just notice, he burns with this offense. And this is what verse 5 says. When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down or do obeisance to him, Haman was infuriated. He is not just irritated or annoyed, he is enraged. He's filled with rage. And I think he's so upset because this was never just about respect for him. This was about reverence. This was about worship. This was about thinking that somebody is better than you, elevated, higher position. So Haman doesn't just want to be acknowledged. He wants to be in this position in which people are bowing down and worshiping him. He wants people to respond to him like he is ultimate, that he is the ultimate authority. And the moment that one person does not, it exposes something deep within him. It communicates to us as readers that Haman's identity is built upon what other people give him and offer him and think of him. The second that starts to get threatened, everything begins to unravel in this story, and it moves pretty quickly. If we're honest, I think that this connects to what I was just talking with and about in my opening, because that shift I talked about from like being I'm here to serve to I deserve to be seen, that is the same shift that we start to notice with Haman, and it's really, really subtle. It's a really subtle thing, especially for me in regard to ministry in a church setting. It's real subtle in leaders within a church system. When they move from I deserve this sort of, I need this visibility, I need this praise, I need affirmation, I need to be seen. When we're shifting to that from just, hey, I want to serve and I want to participate, it's a very subtle shift. And this is where it gets really uncomfortable in this narrative, because most of us don't need the whole room to bow down to us. We just need a few people. We really just need the right people to acknowledge us. We need the right people to give us praise and validation and affirmation. We need them to notice us. We need to be seen by them. They make us feel like we matter. And so when we're not seen by them, something starts to burn within us. Something begins to, tighten. And sure, maybe not outwardly, right? But internally, we do feel that. There's something that happens, that frustration, that quiet offense. Maybe a coworker is not honoring you the way that you think that you need to be honored. You're not being seen by the people that surround you in your family, and you're starting to get tired. I'm doing all the dishes, and I'm doing all the laundry, and I'm running the kids around, and I'm cooking dinner, and I'm whatever, and I just don't feel validated. I don't feel supported, right? We get here. We get to the end of ourselves, and we have to acknowledge what we need, what's actually going to feed our spirits in that thing. Because if we don't deal with it now, if you're not dealing with these conversations in your workplace and your families, they will escalate, and they will do exceptional damage to the people around you. And so let's keep reading and see what happens with Haman. Is he going to deal with it, or is he not? When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow down or do obeisance to him, Haman was infuriated, but he thought it beneath him to kill only Mordecai. So having been told who Mordecai's people were, Haman plotted to destroy all of the Jews, the people of Mordecai, throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus. Well, okay, it escalated quickly. We're not taking time with this story. We're just going to move right into it. What's happening here is that because one man does not bow to Haman, he decides that killing one man is not enough. He wants to kill an entire ethnic group of people. He wants to sanction genocide for the entire Jewish race. You guys tracking with this? How quickly unchecked, unchallenged pride has escalated. One person doesn't bow down, and now everybody is lumped into the same people group. This is collective punishment for one personal offense. What's unsettling about this is that Mordecai didn't attack him, he didn't provoke him, right? He didn't insult him, he didn't threaten him. He just didn't bow. He just didn't honor him with worship, the way that he expected and felt he was owed and due, and that was enough. Because I think when pride is driving your life, it doesn't really need a real threat. It needs a wounded ego. And wounded ego is enough. It is enough for humanity to start looking for something bigger to take down, something that will make it feel powerful again. So Haman doesn't just target Mordecai. He dehumanizes an entire group of people. This is not hard for our minds to make sense of. Even in our lifetime, we have seen power and ego and pride go unchecked and unchallenged when all of a sudden an entire people group, an entire category of people are dehumanized and are attacked. Yeah, you guys tracking with me? They're all the same. They're all a problem. They all need to go. And this is where pride turns into something very dark. Because I think when you stop seeing people as individuals, it becomes so much easier to justify harming them. It becomes a lot easier to rationalize destruction. And before long, what started as a personal offense to one person becomes a plan for annihilation of an entire people group. This is the trajectory. When you have unchecked pride, your thinking becomes distorted, and then it leads to this destructive action. And it happens so much faster than we think. It happens so much faster on a grand global scale. It happens so much faster in our own hearts than we want to acknowledge. And doing a lot of marriage counseling, having been divorced myself, this is one of the things I hear the most. Wounded ego, unchecked pride over years, because nobody's getting divorced overnight. I know I certainly didn't. Years and years of things that are not dealt with and are not appropriately managed grow and cause so much more destruction than you ever intended or you ever thought was possible, right? It doesn't start looking evil, okay? Pride never starts out looking evil. It starts looking justified every time. It starts looking validated. It's, I was wronged. I deserve better. They shouldn't have done that. And left alone, it grows into something so much bigger than we ever intend. Okay, let's keep going. It says this in Esther 3:7. In the first month, which is the month of Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pure, which means they cast the lot, before Haman for the day and for the month. And the lot fell on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. So Haman doesn't just feel offended, he starts planning. And I want you to notice how he starts planning, what his strategy is here. It's fascinating to me as I read this text. I think this is intelligent. This is crafty. This is smart execution of a horrific plan because he casts lots. And the lots are called pure in this text. In the ancient world, casting lots was a way people tried to discern outcomes, and it was a way to allow God to influence the trajectory of their decision making. So they would do things like roll dice, or like we saw in the book of Jonah 2 years ago when we walked through that. It's like this idea of casting lots and drawing straws. It shows up in Scripture over and over and over again where God's people use lots to discern the outcome that God would have for them. So on the surface, it sounds like spiritual. Like we're kind of into it. Like we like it, okay? Like Haman is probably trying to seek direction from God to make sure that he can annihilate an entire people group and justify it because he's personally been offended because he hasn't been worshipped by one person. And so it makes sense to us that he would use this trajectory, right? But that's not actually what's happening here. Haman could care less about discerning God's will. He's trying to control timing. He's trying to give his plan the appearance of inevitability, because if the outcome feels decided, then he doesn't have to wrestle with the idea of whether or not it's right or wrong. He has no moral compass if he can just leave it up to fate, leave it up to chance. He just has to execute it in the timing that the lots ask him to. Haman is taking something that belongs in the realm of trust, belongs into the realm of God, and he's using it to disguise his own desire for this revenge. But the irony of the text is that he thinks he's leaving the outcome to chance by choosing this pathway. I think the story is quietly showing us something that we need to be reminded of all the time, at least maybe just me, that what looks like chance is never outside of God's reach. That God is in every single coincidence and every single luck and every single lottery win. The lot is cast, but the story is absolutely not random. This is what God is trying to communicate throughout the book of Esther. Even when humans try to surrender things to fate or chance in Scripture, God always intervenes, and he is never absent from how the plan unfolds. So Haman thinks he's stepping into inevitability, but he's actually stepping into accountability. And so what he calls delayed, or destiny, is just delayed accountability. God is going to move. God is going to show up. God is going to have his way. God is going to do what he's going to do. But Haman has no idea what's coming down the pipe. So Haman goes to the king. This is what the text says. And Haman said to King Ahasuerus, "There is a certain people scattered and separated among the peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of every other people, and they do not keep the king's laws, so that it is not appropriate for the king to tolerate them." I'm fascinated by this point too. Haman's wicked smart. He doesn't go to the king and say, "I am angry. I am frustrated and offended. My feelings are hurt because somebody did this personal thing to me." Instead, what he does is he turns a personal offense, I'm just going to remind you what we're talking about here, to a public concern. He's going to reframe his ego as a threat to the empire. Now we're concerned. And that's what makes this so dangerous. Because now it doesn't sound like revenge. It sounds like policy. It sounds like politics. It sounds like it's reasonable. Maybe we should put a law in place. Maybe we should change some things because I'm personally offended by how you're living your life. And now I need everybody to make sure that this is a public concern. You guys seeing where I'm headed with this? This is what we do when our ego is unchecked, when our pride is unchecked. When this kind of language sort of takes over, like there's a group that doesn't fit, or they're different, they're not aligned, they are a problem, it becomes easy to justify almost any action if I can get everybody to agree that they are the problem. They. Put this into your own life. At work, who is they? They are the problem. They are not doing their job. I am doing all the work, and I'm not getting credit for it. In your marriage, they are the problem. I am doing all the work. They are doing nothing. A personal offense, when not unchecked, when not dealt with, with guys, emotionally intelligent conversations to do work, to move through conflict. When those things are not happening, we end up creating laws and policies to annihilate people. So Haman adds money to this discussion with the king. He says this: "If it pleases the king, let a decree, a law be issued for their destruction. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who have charge of the king's business, so that they may put it into the king's treasury." So now there's incentive. Money talks. We've got pride, and now we have incentive. And the text tells us, I won't even read it because I don't want to read it out loud. The king just agrees. No investigation. No Nancy Drewing happening here, or Hardy Boys moment. We're not looking into it at all. The king's like, cool. Okay, yeah, this people group's a problem. They have different rules and different laws, and I don't need to ask any questions. This doesn't sound good. And now you're going to give me money? I'm in. This sounds like all right, cool. And so there's this passive authority that happens here. I have quite a few tattoos. Don't judge me, you judgy judgers. But this one right here says curiosity in Danish. I live my life by curiosity. I think that's why I work so hard to create a space and a culture where people can safely explore faith. I am curious and I want to know, I want to understand. I think when you move forward with an agenda and you have everything figured out and you're right about everything, you miss out on so much of the beauty and the goodness in our world. But if you could frame every interaction with curiosity and move forward asking questions and ask another one and then ask one more and then maybe ask another one, you would be surprised at how human everybody is and how lovely and wonderful most people are. Most people that harm you or damage you have been harmed and damaged, and they've just never had a safe place to work through their trauma or explore what a different pathway could be. They've never had anybody that takes the time to love them well enough to see a pattern interrupted. If you follow Jesus, may I submit to you that you are called to be a pattern interrupter. Hold space for the people in your life who are broken and help them interrupt patterns of harm and discord. Be curious. Passive authority is dangerous, and it's really scary. And if you hold that power and you use it that way, you can create a lot of pain for other people. With one signet ring, a death sentence has now become official law. It's sanctioned genocide. So let's retrace our steps in Esther. What started as one man being disrespected now becomes legalized destruction of a people group. And something that I think is so frustrating about this story is that no one in power, no one is angry. No one in power is asking questions. They are just indifferent. And I think that might be one of the most dangerous forces in our story. Indifference, not rage, not anger, but passivity. I'm not going to do any due diligence here. Just, it is what it is. A willingness to hand over people that you do not know to death because it's just easier than asking questions. Because it's easier than slowing down. Because it's easier than resisting a system that already feels like it's in motion. So what am I going to do? And this is how evil scales. This is how it's exponential and where it reaches. It doesn't always need loud villains. Sometimes it just needs like quiet agreement. Like somebody just to say, sure, that's fine. Yep, let's just do that. Let's change the policy. Let's change the law. Let's sort of appease this people group, and like we don't need to think about the disregard to this people group. Like it's just, I got too much stuff going on. It is what it is, yeah? Most of us do not think of ourselves as Haman. We don't read the book of Esther and put ourselves in his role. Everybody wants to be Esther because she's dope. So we all want to be the queen on the chessboard, right? But we have all had moments where we have believed that, it's so much easier to believe a narrative as it has been presented to us than take the time to pause. It's easier for us to stay uninvolved than risk any kind of discomfort or, I'm not going to get into this mess. It's not my mess. And so if people are harmed, like that's on them. That's their consequences. Like I have nothing to do with this, right? I wonder if Jesus felt that way. Slowly, without even realizing it, we start participating in things that feel normal, but are not life-giving for all people. And that's how quickly things shift from offense to systems to law. This is no longer just an ancient history message. It's a mirror moment for us, and I really want us to slow down for just a hair here. Not because the text slows down, it doesn't, it flies forward. But because our lives usually don't. Brett asked me this morning, he's like, did you rest? When I was away, and I just laughed. No. You guys know me, I don't do that. I'm moving, I'm fast, I'm going. And man, God's sometimes in our faces about resting. And so I want us to stop for a minute with this concept and with this idea. We have the potential to become people who participate in things without ever asking a question about whether or not they are forming us into life-giving stewards that bear God's image, or people that are harming and damaging and hurting those around us. We don't take time to consider if what we are participating in, policies and laws and rules and regulations, we get in line. Our culture has taught us to do that. We get in line. I recognize that most of us do not stand in palaces, right, making decrees, but we do stand in conversations. You stand in conversations in your workplace and in your families. You stand in conversations on social media and comment sections, what you're putting out there into the interwebs. You stand in conversations in the church lobby and at the gas station, and you interact with people at your local Target. You're constantly talking to people, and you're hosting space. And what you do with that time matters. How you treat other people genuinely and truly matters. We stand in these quiet internal dialogues where we rehearse stories about other people, and we cast judgments about them. So the question for us this morning is not just like, would I do what Haman did? Because I think the majority of people in the world would say, oh, no, gosh, I would never do what Haman did. But I think the deeper question, and this is why this story is in our Bibles, is because the Bible is asking you, where are you starting to sound like Haman without even realizing it? Where are you turning personal frustration into a narrative about people like that? Those people, the thems, the others. Where are you taking a wound and you're letting it grow into judgment and bitterness and resentment? Where are you mistaking your perspective for the whole truth? I'm right and everybody else is wrong. God bless you. Because here's what pride rarely feels like in the moment. Pride rarely feels like arrogance. It actually feels like clarity. Pride feels like certainty. It feels like fairness. It feels like I'm just noticing what's actually happening, and I'm just right, and everyone else is wrong. This is everyone else's problem, but I know the way. I'm walking in it. I'm right. I'm justified. I'm validated. I'm clear. That's how pride oftentimes hides itself from us. But underneath it, something can be forming, a tightening, a hardening, a slow loss of curiosity towards people, a slow increase in certainty that we are right and everyone else is the problem. And so it doesn't start with this explosion. It starts with this slow erosion, and it's dangerous. So if this text is a mirror, we definitely don't want to rush past it. We pause, we let it ask questions of us before we try to apply it to anyone else. This is the work that I had to do when I was writing this message. I had to sit with these questions and consider, where do I feel like I need to be seen? Where do I feel like I deserve more? And then weighing that, and then asking God, hey, is this justified, or man, is this ego? Is this true service, and or is this true pride? Where are we at? So I think oftentimes the most faithful response to some of these stories is simple honesty. It's simply becoming aware. It's getting to know yourself well enough that you can ask these questions of yourself and that you know you're giving yourself a truthful answer. A willingness to ask, God, where am I being formed right now, and what and who is forming me? Where is my formation coming from? What voices are in my life that I'm allowing in to shape and mold the person and the character that I have? What narrative am I starting to believe without even questioning it? I just know. Where is pride starting to feel reasonable? And where is it starting to shape something that could be potentially dangerous in me? And I think if we can sit with that honestly, without rushing to defend ourselves or defend others, then I think something really beautiful can begin to happen. Because awareness is the place where God will begin to interrupt your patterns. If you are stuck in a cycle and you hate it, and you don't understand how to get out of it, I would suggest you start by sitting with yourself and asking some of these questions and allowing God in to interrupt that pattern. Here's how the chapter closes. Because the story doesn't end with a conversation in a palace, it ends with paperwork and ink and authority, with something that now cannot easily be undone. Esther 3:12 said, "Then the king's secretaries were summoned, and an edict was written, and it was written in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed with a king's ring." There it is. It's official. It's legal. Genocide is happening. And this moment, it's irreversible in the logic of the empire. There's no democracy here. When the king says the word, it is done. It's black and white. There's no get out of jail free card here. So what began literally 12 verses ago as a personal offense to one man has now become systemized harm. And once it's written, it gets sent out to the whole province. Letters were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces, giving orders to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all Jews, young and old, children and women, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. That category, that language for this category is so intentional. There's no one left untouched. It's total and it's complete. It's legalized genocide of an entire people group. What a horrifying reality for the Jewish people. We're talking couriers coming into your town, telling you the day and the time that you will be murdered. And it's legal, and it's allowed. The thing about this that's so sickening to me is that evil does not operate outside the system. It operates within it. It is allowed and it is licensed. I think we have some of these laws in existence today in our world. People all around the world, including this country, are subjected to laws outside of their control. They have no power. Those laws are doing real damage and real harm to people, and nobody's asking questions. We're just following the law. We're being law-abiding citizens. We are fantastic. It's dangerous when ego is at the helm, pride is at the helm of leadership. This is what it boils down to. Over years, over decades, over centuries, things shift and change. Esther 3:15 says this, "The king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Susa was thrown into confusion." This says a lot. Up here, at this level, there's comfort. We're just drinking and we're eating and we're hanging out. We're having conversation and it's like no big deal. And then at the center of this storyline is just indifference. If it doesn't affect me, then I'm not getting involved. And then on the edges, there's confusion and fear and total chaos, and nobody in power is moving towards repair. They're just sitting into it. Systems can function, not always through rage, but through normalization, through distance, through the ability to separate yourself from the consequences on another person. But people don't experience it that way. They experience bewilderment and confusion and shock. I think confusion is what happens when reality no longer makes moral sense. when something like this is written and sanctioned, it causes total shock. Nobody even knows, like, what is happening? We don't even have language to put towards this kind of thing. I think when what is official is no longer right, we experience a wave of chaos internally. And this is where the chapter ends. No resolution, no hope, just real fear and real tension. And so where do we go with that? We end chapter 3 with this like jaw-dropping moment where an entire people group are going to be murdered. Men, women, children, and it's happening. And there's no way it can't. Esther 3 refuses to let us pretend that evil always looks like chaos. Sometimes it looks like order. Sometimes it looks like signatures and seals. And sometimes the most faithful thing we can do in a moment like this is simply refuse to look away so quickly and go back to our normal everyday lives. Because real life does not move through these things very quickly either. There are seasons where things feel written and fixed and decided in a courtroom, in a boardroom, with a lawyer, with judges, or the structures feel too big and the systems are way too settled and the momentum is so far gone. It's in those moments, I think, that the temptation for us is either to panic or to completely disengage and shut down. Typically, you are ordered in your personality to do one of those two things. To assume everything is out of control or to assume that nothing can be done. But Esther 3 holds us at the end of the chapter in a very different place, a much harder place, in my opinion, a slower place. It shows us what it feels like when pride goes unchecked, when power goes unexamined, and when people become categories instead of neighbors. And it doesn't resolve for us yet, which means we have to learn how to live in the tension of walking out of a courtroom, of walking out of a boardroom, when decisions feel final, walking out of a marriage or a friendship. When you sit in that tension, the question is not just what do we do about Haman, right? We already see what happens. The deeper question for us is what kind of people are we becoming in a world that produces Hamans and Xerxes and silence all at the same time? What kind of people are we going to be in a world that's very comfortable with indifference and passivity? What kind of people as followers of Jesus are we going to be when God calls us to love our neighbor and we are comfortable with seeing our neighbors annihilated? Where am I quietly starting to believe that my perspective is the only reasonable one? Where is my heart becoming less curious about people, less slow to judge, less willing to question my own certainty? I want to close this way. What the book of Esther has been doing underneath all of this, even when we haven't named it yet, it's been revealing that God is present in the silence. Aubrey ended her message last week talking about how God is not loud in this chapter. He's not named in this chapter, but he's not absent. That's what she preached, and it matters so deeply. I was so moved just being reminded of it because it means that when power feels final and the verdict has come down, when systems feel irreversible and established, the story is not closed. And so we don't end with despair as followers of Jesus, because Esther 3 whispers to us to not confuse silence with abandonment. God is not leaving you alone in this. He's ordering our steps. He goes before us. He prepares a table before our enemies. This is our God. And so we must trust, we must hope. And so my encouragement to you, if you're in a place where everything feels done, period, and scary and unnerving, even with all the things happening around the globe, it feels disorienting and chaotic. The hope for us and the encouragement for us is that God says, hey, hold on. I am the one in control, so hold on, press on. because the decree may have been written, but so has redemption, and God is in the business of redeeming all broken things and bringing good out of all the rubble. He's faithful to do it.